take the time to get educated and get curious. I think that the people that will spend their own time learning about the industry they're in will be unstoppable. Those are the people that will really drive the business forward.
This is the Operational Clarity Podcast, where we sit down with experienced leaders from the XO Strata and community management industries from around the world to discuss what it really takes to build and run great operations. My name is Robert Hangu, and today we're joined by Leigh Oliver from Perth, Australia. Leigh is an award-winning senior strata manager, mediator, and co-founder of XO Strata. She consistently talks about governance, trust, transparency, and education. Her personal mission is to show owners that high-quality strata managers exist and that they shouldn't settle for poor service. She believes operational excellence depends on strong collaboration and people management. Leigh, welcome to the show.
Hi, Robert. Great to be with you.
You've mentioned a trip you did to Salzburg when you've met some other Australian tourists there who've reacted negatively when you said you were a strata manager. Where do you think that reaction comes from?
Yes, that was something that was really an eye-opener to me. So I was on a family holiday to Salzburg and we were on the Sound of Music bus tour to visit all the venues that we use for the filming of that show, that movie. And when it was mainly Australians and New Zealanders on that bus, and I was talking with each other and people said, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a strata manager." And there was a collective groan. And that was something that was really shocked me because I was somebody that worked huge numbers of hours a week, always trying to work in the best interests of my council of owners and owners within schemes. And to think that people had that negative view, it was quite confronting in that time. And the first time I really realized what people feel towards strata managers. Where does it come from? I guess it comes from people's lived experiences and them feeling that the strata management industry is maybe not working for them. So their view of it is perceived negatively. And obviously, I'm one person. I do what I do in my own little world, but it came as a big shock to me that was the view. And from things that obviously have happened since in the media, I can see why people would think like that. I understand it, but it's obviously something which the industry has to kind of turn around. We're going to have to work very hard to turn that around as an industry, I think.
You have a background in the airline industry. How does your customer service experience from those days shape how you run XO Strata today?
Yeah, so I came from a background of working in travel and airlines, and for that, obviously service is such a key thing. You know, people go on holiday, they're away for 2 weeks of the year, and they need to feel like they're treated special within that time. So part of the way where we were trained is, you know, nothing is too much, and you say yes to requests and trying to make that time feel very, important to those people. So I came from a background where, people were at the top, how they felt. And when I came into Strata, I realized that probably wasn't at the top of the list of important items. And so I decided that for me, the most important thing was to give great service. And that had to be backed up by putting out great information to people as well, in terms of when we send out minutes or what we put online or how I give my information to people so they can make decisions. So the importance of doing service well is really at the top of what we're looking to achieve at XO Strata. I want to build a company with a great reputation and one that people go, I want to be part of that one. So that's really the driving force behind XO Strata. It's service, and it's about doing the things we do well, that attention to detail is there. People know that we care. We care about their schemes. We care about helping them manage their schemes, walking alongside the owners and getting the best outcomes for them.
Let's talk through your process of picking strata companies you're working with, especially requests for proposals. You've mentioned you get these, some are more detailed than others. Could you walk us through your process of picking those and tailoring your service while at the same time trying to scale?
Yes. So obviously now I'm an owner within a business. Obviously that involves dealing with a lot of, people requesting our services. Some of those requests come in a request for proposal, which is like a formal document where the strata company sets out all the different things that they're looking for that strata manager to do and deliver on. Others might just be a website inquiry, with 4 lots in a suburb of Perth or whatever, and they're very different. But one thing I do is we have decided that we're going to just do one service offering. We're not going to do different tiers of different managements. So if I get a request for proposal where somebody wants something so customized and unique, generally I will turn that down. And the reason being is I don't think you can scale a business by doing a different service for each different person or each different strata company. An example of this was one request for proposal I received recently said, we want you to include all the accountancy costs and everything else in your proposal. So basically work that into your management fee. But I wanted to run it so that when people use an accountancy service, which obviously they have to do various functions like lodge business activity statements, what I wanted to do is that bill then just goes against that strata company that is paid for out of their funds. They can see the company it was paid to. I don't want to put that into my expenses and then pay that separately, because I've got to then remember to do that for that company and then differently for this one. I just think it's like, to scale a business, what's most important is you choose a way you work and you replicate that, and that is scalable. It's not scalable to be able to do different things for different people. And I think those expectations would lead to people being disappointed if you weren't able to meet them. So we choose who we work with carefully. We ask questions. We visit the schemes. I don't just send out pricing to people, because you can look at a scheme on Google Earth and it might look all beautifully neat and manicured, but you don't always know what's going on behind the scenes. We had one the other day where we were asked to put forward a proposal. We got in touch with the person that had asked for the proposal, and there was all manner of problems in terms of one owner who had them at SAT, and they'd been terminated by the previous strata manager. They'd put out, I think, 19 different requests to different companies for management, and they were just struggling. I feel really sorry for them, but I think going forward, many strata companies are going to find it difficult to get management if they're not in a good order that would make people like myself and our company actually feel excited to work with them. And I think that's something which going forward will present a problem, especially with less and less people in the industry. And, but as a business owner, I have to make decisions in what we take on that we can service correctly and properly. And I can't take on everything. So we have to be choosy. That requires learning about that scheme. Is it one that fits within our portfolio that we can manage effectively, or is it one that we're best to let through to the keeper?
Now, you've earned multiple awards as a strata manager during your time at your past company through 2023, 24. Now, you obviously know your profession very well. How was your previous company dealing with this scaling problem? And what have you learned from there that you can apply today?
Yeah, there's the previous company I worked at when I first started there. I think it was maybe around 1,000 lots, and it has done remarkably well and is now up to, I think, around about 5,000 lots. There's been lots of learnings along the way. And a lot of the things that just made sense to me, I was lucky in that the owner of that business was very receptive to sort of my suggestions and, letting me work in a way that kind of worked for me and I felt worked for the clients. And we introduced a lot of things that were, different to what the industry was doing. So I took a lot of what I learned there and things that I put in place, things that worked, and they have become the basis of XO Strata. Yet I'm just trying to think of specific things. One example that I can give would be when you have a strata company where there are clear safety issues, you might visit the scheme and you can see pavers all, trip hazards and all the rest of it. I think it's really important to be able to have the ability to say to that strata company, if you do not fix these safety issues, I am not going to continue working with you. If you do not prioritize making sure this scheme is safe for the visitors who come and for the residents and for, all the other visitors or whatever that use the common property, the risk is great for them and for the strata manager. Plus, we have issues with insurance disclosures and all the rest of it. So it's really important to work with strata companies that get that. And if they don't, or they don't want to, or they don't want to prioritize that, being able to separate ties. And I did have a situation, I did write about it on LinkedIn, where there'd been some rotten stairs at a scheme. And when the new staircase was finally ready, the owners were like, you know what, we don't really want to shut down the building to do this. We're going to do it in a few months. And at that point, I had approached the manager of my previous company. I said, look, I'm going to suggest we say either do it or we part ways, because if someone was to fall through, the risk is not worth it for a $500 a month management fee. And he was very supportive and said, let go for it. So that we told the owners that we can't continue to manage you if you do not listen to this. And they did, and it was all done, and we continued. So I think that those kind of things are really important. But I also want to acknowledge in this that there might be some people that are strata managers working within bigger organizations whereby the business doesn't want to just let go of a big contract. So whilst the strata manager might feel a bit conflicted saying, I know this is not getting done, the business is like, well, sorry, that's worth X amount of dollars to the company. So it puts you in a difficult position as a strata manager. I would say it's really important that the businesses support the strata managers, especially if they're trying to do something which clearly is in the best interests of the owners and the visitors and of the scheme.
Given all this reputation that the strata industry has, how easy or difficult is it to attract new talent into the industry?
Well, strata management is one of those industries which I think is losing staff much more quickly than the national sort of average across all industries. Attracting talent into the industry is hard. I don't actually think people know what it is. And I remember my son, when he was at secondary school, I said to him, can you put a post online and I wonder what you do is, who knows what strata is within your friend group, because you had a WhatsApp group. So he puts this post online. He goes, my mum wants to know if you know what strata is. These people, all his friends will come back going, yeah, I think I know what it is. Yeah, I think I know because your mum's talked about it. And then other people are like, I have no idea what it is. So these are all people that are around about 17, 18. And then one person comes back and says, wait, right, we're talking about rock layers, aren't we? And I was just like, so these are our kids that will probably have a strata home as their first home, and they don't know what it is. They don't understand. It's not just that. So how are we going to attract school leavers when people don't even know what it is? And those young people in the industry to come through when they don't even understand what it is or how it works. And they're the typical people that buy into a strata scheme, like younger people as their first home. So that was quite interesting. I think from my own journey, I started at the very bottom. I didn't know what strata was. I came from England. Strata wasn't a thing. I started doing the admin job, which was a lot of things like sub-meter billing and all sorts of things like that, and worked my way through until becoming a strata manager. I think that is a good path for people to come through the industry on. I don't think it's ideal for people to just come in and just be strata managers off the bat. I know that they can be because the legislation allows, it doesn't prevent that, but I think it dilutes the professionalism of the industry when you have people that are, effectively helping people manage their buildings. Do they have the experience to back up? So I think to attract people to the industry, we really have to have a pathway of how you can go from this to being a strata manager, having the education in place. And yeah, it's a problem of how you're going to communicate that to people. I don't have the answers on that. I just know how I came into it. And I do know that a lot of the industry are talking a lot about staffing. And one of the things we did with XO Strata was decided that it's just Silvana and myself. We'll manage what we can manage. We don't have plans to get staff, because I do acknowledge that's something that is very difficult to get people that can be like you and be able to do what you do. And I think there's so much risk there. It scares me at this point in time. So I want to keep my business just to us two. And who knows in time what will happen, but that's where we're at.
Mm-hmm. We've had various guests from across the country, across Australia, and they were talking about increasingly more and more developments that were adopting the strata scheme. Do you see strata as an industry becoming more known in the future?
I do, but what scares me is it going to become known for the wrong reasons? Because it's in the media. There's more and more coverage on it. We're seeing situations where what gets attention is when things go wrong, or when, we've had the Four Corners episode, which obviously got a lot of attention, a lot of traction. I don't I don't feel optimistic at this time that we are able to kind of change that easily. I think there was a saying I remember, he said, you can't talk your way out of a situation you behaved your way into. You have to behave your way out of it. Okay. So I think that requires more people than not really doing the right thing and really holding high levels of accountability. And at the moment, what's grabbing the headlines is things that are going wrong in strata schemes. And that's what's being presented. And that's what the mass media are seeing. And it's disappointing.
Let's shift gears a little bit into the operational day-to-day. What parts of strata management would you say still rely too heavily on manual work today?
One, from my perspective right now, the most manual thing is probably the onboarding of schemes. When we get a management over, it's literally having to go through all the documentation and pull out the stuff that I need to put into our system to kind of make a complete sort of set of records. One of the biggest frustrations with a lot of strata managers will relate to is when we have bylaws, the way these are scanned, don't have optical character recognition. So being able to search a bylaw document for a specific area, like for example, pets or whatever else, is laborious. That is just manual. And I would love to see changes in that. Obviously, the AGM planning, I know we have software where we can do minutes, and that's a great base place to start if we're going to use Fathom or other different, companies that can record a meeting and then produce a great set of minutes. But there's obviously still a lot of tweaking that needs to go on. So I do see that a lot of it is still very manual. I think we are starting to see a shift in software that can help us do things, but I don't think we're there yet. I think a lot of it is still very, manual and having somebody having to, check everything. But that onboarding one for me is probably the biggest one and one of the biggest frustrations. And I don't think like many owners will realize this, but different software packages have different ways of doing accounting. And the problem is what kind of comes across from one system, and when you put it into your system, it's sometimes like trying to put a square peg in a round hole and trying to get the accounts to match what comes off that one onto the opening position is problematic. I would love to see one central accounting method that all softwares use so that when there is a transfer of management, that it's much easier to onboard the financials. That's probably a big pain point at the moment and a big time exercise to go through that and to actually get it to a point where you get, right, now we're good, now we can start.
Are you doing the whole onboarding of the financials manually now, or are you still aided by some sort of software?
Yeah, so we have an account support person that works with us. She has her own company. We pay her to do that work for us. So when a strata company comes across to us, we have to fill in a spreadsheet that goes to the software provider. They do the onboarding and then they release it to us. But there's lots of tweaks that need to happen. So that is quite manual. You just can't copy one to another. It is quite manual to actually get it in a position where it's ready to go. Yeah. So it is a manual process.
It sounds to me a lot like there are different systems involved, and the manual part consists of tying these loose ends together in a way.
Yeah, well, it's all different, like even the budget line item categories and what that's called, and then, how to get that transcribed into our systems, charts of accounts. There's so many working parts. I mean, an example which a strata manager will understand is, when you have a transfer of funds between, say, an admin and reserve fund, one software treats it differently to the next software. So that can cause like teething problems and things. So there's lots to take in, but having a great accounts person who understands strata accounting is very different to regular accounting. Essentially you've got owners paying themselves to run their scheme. They're not subject to the Australian accounting standards because people aren't deciding whether they're going to buy shares in a company or whatever else. They don't get subjected to that same scrutiny, but it's very, very different. And people need to understand that strata accounts are a bit of a breed of their own. So it's very important to have a good accounts person who can assist with that and understands how it should be done. But that is a pain point, and it is something which, I guess that would be, if I could wave a magic wand, having one central way of doing this that's all softwares go by would be a real game changer when schemes change from one company to the next.
Do you have a ballpark estimate of the percentage that this manual repetitive work takes, let's say, in a month? Is it in the 40% ballpark, 60%, 70%?
For the onboarding or for in general?
Let's stay with the onboarding.
Probably 70% plus. I mean, we do have systems in place whereby we take the main key documents. So we have a whole checklist of things that we need. So we're not onboarding huge amounts of historic AGM minutes, but we'll put the last one in, and we just try and get it to a point whereby if an owner needs to see their information, they'll get portal access, and the main key documents are there, those main sort of foundation documents, as we call them. So they're things like their certificate of currency, their minutes, the notice of meetings, if there's been EGMs, and then just general notes about the building and all that sort of stuff. The notes are super important in terms of, I know we sort of discuss about, the information can't live in people's heads. It needs to be documented somewhere. And I remember a few weeks ago, Ivy, who's doing our accounts, had said that she had done an onboarding for another strata management business, and she had found $100,000 that had basically not been transferred over. And it was because of a lack of documentation coming from one strata manager to the next. Not that anyone had taken that. It just is that the person who had organized everything had left and there wasn't the proper documentation. That's super important, making sure that the notes and everything are all there so that we can kind of hit the ground running when we move into the management of the new schemes for us.
This is an interesting topic because we've had a guest on the show from the US who's managing an HOA scheme. So homeowner association management, how it is called over there. And he had this concept of a backup manager. He had the same problem that the knowledge was basically trapped in the manager's head, most of it. So when that manager would go on vacation or they would have sick leave or anything like that, the problem was that the owners were having trouble getting the right information, right? Because that one person was not there. So he had a backup manager who basically knew the same things as the main manager. And I found it very interesting that he came up with this solution. And then over time, he brought a system in, mainly AI powered, that had all this knowledge base. And then if the manager would be away, basically everybody could take over that scheme and could provide service right away. So it's interesting to see how the same problem exists across geographies.
It definitely does. I think that's an interesting way of approaching it. I also think as well here, there's a lot of value to having an assistant strata manager who as kind of across a selection of, let's say they work across two different strata managers and they assist them. Having that assistant strata manager who can sort of step in and help because they have information as well, I think that really helps. I think that model works quite well, having an assistant working with a couple of strata managers, and especially if you've got a big business. I don't think an assistant can be across everything, but I think having specific knowledge about certain buildings means that they can jump in, and it's a natural path as well towards them maybe becoming a strata manager. So I don't underestimate the value of assistants. Assistants are hugely important to successful strata managers.
Let's quickly go back to the problem of onboarding. You've mentioned that there was OCR software around and being available. To what extent are you using it for the onboarding process?
Probably not much at all, to be honest with you, with regard to that. The reason I brought that up is because a lot of the documents that are critical to schemes are the bylaws. And when obviously, like the bylaws are all registered at the Landgate within WA, and the documents are scanned, and the documents then we get back as more like a photo kind of thing, and it quite often is in the wrong order as well, which is we have to change it all around to kind of make it so it reads numerically. But what's the problem with that is that we are unable to search things that we need to. So you start looking through the whole document. So the way I've overcome that is when lodge bylaws with the solicitor, they actually send me a copy of the document that they're going to lodge, and then we actually put that one in, and then the owners can actually search that document. But I can only do that when I'm involved in the bylaw consolidation. But I think that is a useful tip for people to go, well, just put that one in instead, and then you can search pets or whatever else, and it comes up, because the document that comes back from Landgate has obviously the stamp on the bottom, everything else. It's critically important, but it's not searchable. So if there was a way that we could have that, it would be very helpful to a lot of people. But the OCR would help us be able to, it would save time, like looking through things. And also when we onboard schemes, you need to be aware of what the bylaws are. There can be some real quirky things in there. And if you don't know about that, you could go to an AGM whereby, there might be something in the bylaws that says, at this scheme, you must have 5 people on the council. Say you can normally have between 3 and 7, but some bylaws say this scheme, you have 5. So if you don't know that, you're in an AGM and you're doing the council nominations and you get 7 people nominated, you say, yep, that's fine. Okay, we've got 7 nominations. Everybody, votes on that, and we install a council of 7 people, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, the bylaws say only 5. That is a problem if we don't know about that. So part of the onboarding phase is really kind of going through those bylaws and pulling out those critical things that I need to know to be able to effectively manage that scheme.
And this is being done manually now?
Yes. I mean, I think it's really important. So we do that. I don't know what other people do within the industry in terms of onboarding and in terms of, are those documents just being filed straight away, or are they being looked at and pulled out? I don't know. I just know what I do.
How do you shop around for new software tools when you're encountering a problem?
So we use software for obviously the strata management. I use Notion for, all our kind of like new business inquiries and task management. That was a recommendation from somebody, but I kind of tried it out. It worked. I liked it. I would love to see a software package for strata managers written by strata managers, because I think that there's so much insight that we can give to software providers to sort of say how things would really work effectively for us. And I would also say that no software package that I've looked at, and I've looked at quite a few, is perfect. Some do some things very well and other things not so well. And others do those not so well, that done things very well, but then other things not so well. So there's no perfect solution. So for me, I guess it's about finding out things that are really important and going with that. The software that we're using does allow a lot of client interaction in terms of there's a portal and there's an app, and people can get access to their documents really easily, and they can get updates on jobs and everything else. I think that is critically important going forward, because that means that I don't have to always communicate with people to tell them what's going on. They can just look and see, oh yeah, because if, for example, I'd send a work order and then that comes back to me to say, we're going to be doing this job on this date, then I can just update the system, and then anyone can see that. They can see the notes on that work order. So I don't need to be in constant communication with them. And I think that helps a lot with workload and being able to work smarter. Every one of these packages really does rely on the strata manager putting the information in there. I mean, the information is only as good as what's put in there, right? So notes on everything. When I'm away, people can, as your example of the guy on the XO, he's got someone to back him up, but the notes are critical. If you've got the notes in there and you can search them, that's really, really helpful and really good for our clients, that they know that there's that continuity when someone's on leave.
We are seeing a lot of AI hype going on LinkedIn all the time. We have these AI implementers that promise you the world, but at the end of the day, they don't really deliver. So there's a lot of noise in the industry, and not only in Strata, also in HOA in the US, in Canada as well. I think our audience would be curious to hear from you, from your practical perspective. What is fluff and what does actually work in the day-to-day?
I'm not a big fan of using software to actually answer all my emails for me. Maybe I just need that control. I don't know, but I think that it's really important that the strata manager kind of there's a space for that, but it's, in kind of measured doses. I think that I personally do use AI to sort of improve text that I've written. I also use AI because I like to get content that I keep updating our blog on our website. I obviously do a lot on LinkedIn, and I use AI to help me construct things, make things better. One of my favorite ones is the Notebook LM, and the ability to actually take a case that might have been through a tribunal, and being able to create that into a podcast. And so I share that with people because I appreciate people are quite busy. They don't have time to read things, but there's lots of relevant information that comes out of all this case law that, as you know, we see that come through. So there's lots of really, really good uses for it within Strata. But in terms of the, you know, I haven't really gone down the path of using it quite yet for the day-to-day running of everything. I'm maybe not that confident. I maybe need to learn more about it. I do see that's a future for the way things are going. And I think if you refuse it, you're going to be left behind. We need to use these tools as they become available, but it's just trying to make sure that what we're putting out there is correct. And and for that, I need to be able to kind of have the final oversight on things before I send stuff off. So
how do you go about keeping up to date with what's coming out in terms of technology tools? And is it just you in the company who is thinking about these things? Or do you have somebody who, let's say, is a bit more tech oriented, who owns this automation task inside the company?
So I am actually married to a software developer. So he is really helpful in terms of helping us out with website and, you know, sort of saying, look, you could use this or this tool, helping me in general with all that tech stuff. It's not really my area of expertise because I do Strata. But I also pay a lot of attention to, what people are talking about, LinkedIn, follow all the different, providers. And I'm really curious as well to test new stuff as it comes out. So I'm happy to do that and make suggestions and, for improvements and things, which we've been doing with the package recently, and lean into that. So it's something that is, as you run a business and you've got like lots going on, because Strata managers are really busy, it's hard to kind of be across all of that as well. As I say, I am lucky in that I've got someone that I'm married to that is very technical minded, and so he helps me with that. I'm not so sure that I'm probably the best person in terms of keeping my eye on everything, but I do my best what I can do.
This was a very interesting and deep conversation, and we always like to close it off with a forward-looking question. What advice would you give somebody who is starting out in the strata management industry today?
I would say take the time to get educated and get curious. I think that the people that will spend their own time learning about, the industry they're in will be unstoppable. Those are the people that will really drive the business forward. I would say from what I've seen, that care factor is super important. If you care as a Strata admin kind of person, you will then care as a Strata manager, and it doesn't extrapolate with the more you're paid doesn't make you care more. If you care at that level, you'll care at that level. If you care, it's a really great industry to be in, because we really need people that really care about the clients and care about the buildings that the clients live in. I also think it's important to have an attention to detail. I know it's talked about a lot, but if you have that, like, I have to get that right before it goes to a client mentality, that will take you a long way. Clients really appreciate that. I think in our industry, and in any industry, I think there's always two things. And if you get those two things right, you can build on them. I came from the travel industry. It was service and safety. Come to Strata, I think it's service, and I think it's that attention to detail. Everything we put out has to be very well done. That really is what we have. We don't have a product that people can buy and take apart and review. It's really what we bring in terms of our service and our output that people can evaluate. And I think the people that take the time to learn, take the time to get educated and do it in their own time and really have a passion and are curious, those are the people that will make great Strata managers. I think that, going forward, I'd love to see those kind of people look to see this is a great industry to be in. I wouldn't want to do anything else. I love working with the people. I work across with all sorts of different clients, different buildings. Every day is different. And I sometimes pinch myself thinking, like, 1 minute I'm dealing with something that's completely trivial, and the next minute you've got this something completely random and it's varied. It's exciting. And I think it's a growth industry for people that really care.
Learning and caring are the new superpower in today's AI-powered age. Leigh, where can people find you online?
So I'm quite active on LinkedIn. You can find me, just search for Leigh Oliver. Also my own website, which is xostrata.com.au. We regularly put blog updates on there. Yeah, I'm looking to partner with strata companies that are looking for great service. And if you were looking for a strata manager that will partner with you to achieve good outcomes for your building, get in touch with us and we'll meet with you and figure out if we are a good match for each other and if we can work together. Find me. Yeah, main LinkedIn's a good place.
Amazing, Leigh. There's a lot of food for thought that we have to think through after this episode. Thanks for joining us and good luck with scaling XO Strata.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Robert. Great to talk to you.